Welcome to Big Band Backstage, brought to you by CP Music Productions and produced at DHB Studios in Manchester, New Hampshire. This podcast celebrates the music and the performers of today's big band scene while uncovering unique stories behind its rich American heritage. CP Music Productions is part of the heartbeat of this movement, with two generations behind it, the father and son team of Clayton Skip Poole and his son CJ Poole. Both join me here at DHB Studios. Skip Poole is CP Music Productions' music director. For nearly 50 years, he has led big bands and collaborated with world-class performers. And Skip, it is good to be back with you, and I know we're going to hear a lot of fun stories today.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Laura.
And CJ Poole is a vocalist, bassist, and the business director for CP Music Productions. And CJ, it is always nice to be with you.
Great to be here, Laura. Thanks.
And our special guest today is Steve March-Tormé, a vocalist, performer, recording artist, radio host, and son of the legendary jazz vocalist, actor, author, arranger, and composer Mel Tormé, who would have turned 100 years old this year. Now, both Tormés, father and son, have a history with CP Music Productions. Mel Tormé and Skip Poole, along with the Clayton Poole Orchestra, performed together in a gala jazz concert back in November of 1981. And Steve March-Tormé was in New Hampshire a few years ago, performing with Skip and the Clayton Poole Orchestra. Steve Tormé joins us now from Appleton, Wisconsin. And Steve, a big, big welcome to Big Band Backstage. It's so nice to meet you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate that.
So I just mentioned that 100th anniversary. Your father would have been 100 years old this year. What's going through your mind at this time?
Well, I wish he was here. I mean, there'd be so much to talk about, and, not just musically, but just the world. He was very, very well read and very opinionated, and I'm sure we'd have a lot of stuff to talk about. But musically, it'd be really interesting to just kind of pick each other's brains right now. But I'm glad I had him for as long as I did. It's also, besides his 100th birthday, it's Oscar Peterson too.
Right.
So another jazz legend.
Right. Musically, what are you reflecting on with that 100th anniversary, both in terms of his career and your own career?
Well, that's a great question. We have this concert coming up called Tormé Sings Tormé, and he put together these arrangements with the great Marty Page. And so what I'm thinking about musically is just how clever and how really well written these arrangements were, because they could have gone with a real stock, big band arrangements, and it would have been just fine. Dad's musicality and his ability to scat would have covered that. But the fact that they cut the band down to 10 pieces for the specific phrasing that Marty Page put into his arrangements, that's really what I'm thinking of as I'm putting the show together. Besides, the visuals and the photos that people haven't seen and the video of me singing with my dad, it's really about the musicality. I know it's kind of a cliche, but these songs, taking, for instance, a medley like Trolley Song and Get Me to the Church on Time and making them sound really hip, like, wow, that was interesting. That's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Wow, that's a beautiful story, actually, Steve, that, here you are, you've been working with your dad's music, off and on for years, and you're still discovering new aspects to appreciate.
Yeah, I really do. It's just, and also the musicians here, the same thing. We're going through rehearsal, and Dad had a tendency when he did the up-tempo stuff to go really fast. Like, holy smokes. It's easy for me. I mean, I can sing those, and it's easy for the drummer, but for the horn players, they're playing some figures that are flying by. And I told them, I said, I want to do them at those tempos. Let's not cheat. I don't want to slow these down. I said, we're either pros or we're not, boys. So it's really fun to hear, and, I'm not a horn player, but I can imagine how tough some of those figures are.
Wow. Have an extra cup of coffee before you come in and
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And work on it. Skip, how about you? What's going through your mind around this 100th anniversary?
I think just a reflection of the fact of what a marvelous legacy Mel left us. That and the fact that tons of memories of the opportunity that I had as a young guy, to be in awe, to meet this legend in person and to experience that, and then to work with him in an orchestra setting, and all of that combined. I had to pinch myself several times, and so I think of that a lot, but also just in general terms how important it is to keep this music fresh and alive. And there's so many other musical things or genres out there today, but at the core of it, what this music is all about is so fundamental to the great American songbook and its performance, and it's so terribly important to keep this music alive and Mel's legacy and what he did for the idiom.
Right. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to tell us some stories about your interactions with Mel Tormé, because I know that'll be a lot of fun. But CJ, how about you as a jazz vocalist? What does Mel Tormé mean to you?
Mel was the maven of jazz vocals. There were very few, especially back then, there were very few actual jazz vocalists. There were a lot of crooners. There were a lot of, vocalists with the big bands who embellished the Great American Songbook's melody, but Mel, his voice was just an incredible instrument of virtuosity because of what he could do, the range he could sing. He had perfect pitch, his scatting and his his technique and all the thoughts that he had going on and the improvisation that he did. It was incredible. And for me, it was really special because he was one of the first vocalists that I grew up listening to. And I was exposed to him at a really young age, and I just was always in awe. Before Sinatra, before Bing, before Bobby Darin, I listened to Mel, and there was no comparison. He was just in a whole league of his own.
Oh, that's interesting. And it's interesting what you said about there's a difference between a vocalist and a crooner. Do you want to say anything more on that, CJ?
Well, it's all about the interpretation, right? Very much so. I think Frank Sinatra was, an incredible crooner. He was incredible. He was an incredible vocalist in his own right, But I would not consider Frank Sinatra to be a true jazz vocalist. Mel Tormé had that extra. He had that extra kick, that that real interpretation of the music, and it took it a step further. I mean, what he was able to do, really playing around the melody, his delivery, and again the scatting aspect too, very similar to another jazz vocalist such as Ella Fitzgerald, and what they could do, and of course Mel idolized Ella for her incredible abilities as well. So. It's always been a real treat to listen to his music, and not only was he such an incredible vocalist, but what he was able to do from an arranging standpoint and composing standpoint as well, going way back to the days when he was singing with Artie Shaw and his Mel tones, and working with Judy Garland, and he was the music director for her the Judy Garland show. I mean, it was just incredible what this guy could do.
Yeah.
And he really fit the music to his voice and what he was performing.
So, Steve, an intimidation factor there, perhaps? When you did those tribute concerts, Tormé Sings Tormé, that you said a moment ago, did you have to sort through some complicated feelings when you approached that project? Or did you just jump in with both feet and say, yeah, this sounds like a great idea?
No, there were no complicated feelings. There were complicated scat passages, that's for sure. DJ's right. One of the things I talk about in this concert is I talk about the same thing you guys opened the show with, the fact that there were some very good singers at that time who were multidimensional. Maybe Bobby Darin could do more than sing. He could hoof. Sammy Davis Jr., who could do almost anything. Mm. But all those people, Bing Crosby, Jack Jones, Steve Lawrence, as good as all those singers were, they didn't arrange or write.
Yeah.
They didn't write songs, and they certainly didn't arrange for orchestra, much less a big band. And the fact that Dad could do that is truly amazing because he didn't go to school for it. Man, my dad didn't go to college. If there was something he had to learn, he read up about it and he learned about it. And the fact you bring up Sinatra is quoted, I do this in the concert, Sinatra said, "If I'm the chairman of the board, Mel Tormé owns the company." And that's how he felt about Dad's ability as a singer. CJ is dead on. My dad learned how to sing those passages by listening to the great saxophone players of the day. He would imitate a sax line just sitting in his bedroom because his mom and dad, my grandparents, would hear him in the other room just go and just imitating drum passages and saxophone passages. That's really how he learned how to scat sing. Because I don't know that you can teach scat singing. Ella, you're right, he just idolized her musical abilities. But I think it was listening to, I think for Dad, it was listening to the radio and going to concerts of big bands and just memorizing the passages and vocalizing it. I mean, he really didn't have a peer as a scat singer besides Ella, in my opinion. I might be prejudiced, but I think that's true. There are people that can scat sing, but I don't know if they're as facile. That's all.
Steve, there's a piece from Tormé Sings Tormé called "Riding High, Shooting High." What's special about that piece?
The tempo. That's a number that I saw him perform a number of times. I said, yeah, I have to include this, and yeah, it's just a really cool piece of music, you know. And Skip's right about the Great American Songbook. As much as so many people have done it, some who shouldn't, but that's just my opinion. Those songs are here for a reason, you know, that they are still popular and people still love listening to a song that is written in the 30s or 40s because they were written so well. I mean, you know, they were great left turns and they were unexpected chord changes because those great writers could do that, which is not to denigrate modern pop music, but it's a whole different bag.
Let's catch a video clip of that piece we just talked about. Riding High, Shooting High.
Oh, boy.
Life's great, life's grand, future all planned. No more clouds in the sky. How am I riding? I'm riding high. Someone I love, mad for my love. So long, Jonah, goodbye. How am I riding? I'm riding high. How am I riding? I'm riding high, riding high, riding high.
Wow. The power and energy there.
Well,
Wonderful.
we kind of cheated on that because it should be quicker than that. I think that was recorded. That was recorded live, and we didn't have any monitors. I said, "You're seriously? We're going to do a live recording, and I don't have a monitor?" I said, "No, you just have to kind of sing it." Because that really should that's where it should be. So I think we cheated a little bit, but that still came out.
I didn't hear it. That sounded fantastic. One of the things I love about this particular episode of Big Band Backstage is that Skip has musical experiences with both you, Steve, and your dad. And Skip, I'd love to hear about some of your favorite musical experiences with Mel Tormé.
Wow, well, that could be a whole program all by itself. But, you know, it's so funny. I was a young guy. I was all of 21 years old. And this was my first major show that I was putting together. And I had a manager named Rosalie Hanson who was very much involved with that. And we, next thing I know, I'm on the phone with Mel's manager at the time was Dale Sheets. And we're going back and forth. Long and short of it was that I met Mel at Marty's on the Upper East Side in New York, which is where he was playing. And at the end of his set, I was asked to go upstage to meet him behind the stage. There was sort of these stairs behind the stage. I went up to his dressing room. And we talked about the upcoming performance. It was November of '81. And we looked over a little bit of his music. He was very gracious. And he said, "There's only one thing that I really have to have." And, of course, I'm 21 and nervous. And I said, "Absolutely, Mr. Tormé." It was always Mr. Tormé. And he said, you have to understand, I need to have a tuba player. Do not put a bass trombone player there. He said, you know, it's a full big band. I need to have the tuba. It was very stressful in that. And, of course, back then, I was about 150 pounds heavier than I am now. And that's what I played was tuba. That was my main axe. And so I said, it's no problem, Mr. Tormé. Not at all. I'll make sure. They said, "We seem really overconfident." I've heard that before. But what makes you say so? I said, "Because I'm the tuba player." And he laughed. He looked at me and he said, "I should have guessed." But anyway, so that's how I first met him. And several weeks later, I picked him up at the airport and we went to the rehearsal. And the rehearsal itself was totally different. Mel handed out his music, and what struck me right away was what a great arranger he was and his knowledge of that. And I've worked with many, many well-known vocalists, and to Steve's point, typically they would show up, go through a couple of numbers, and that's it. Mel was there from the downbeat, and we went through all of his charts, and he opened with Riding High for the concert. But he, at one point, I think it was Lady Be Good or one of those pieces that he had arranged, he was unhappy with the way the saxes were playing. So I've been unhappy with this for some time. And so he, on stage, at the rehearsal, reorchestrated the entire sax section.
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, I hope you guys are okay with that. And they were, top professionals, and they were fine with it. And he smiled, and he said, okay, you play this note, you play that note, and right down the whole section of the sax solo. And I'm just sitting there with this cold piece of metal in my hands thinking, wow. So I was really impressed with that. But anyway, so we went through the rehearsal, and I realized the only other arranger in the book at that time of his material was Marty Page. And it was this one piece that drew my attention, was Blues in the Night, because halfway through the piece, it said tuba solo with Mel. And it had this bullseye with, B flat 13 or whatever it was. And at that point, my hands became rubber. I'm like, oh my word, And we went through it, and it was fine and so forth. And then Mel said, I'm going to do something with a shtick. He said, just heads up. And, he lands on a note. And that note that he lands on is the same note that I come in on. But he said, I'm going to hold it out. And because he was a showman on top of everything, which I learned so much from. That one concert I learned, it was like going to college for 10 years. And he would end that note, and he'd take the mic, and he'd pretend he was a razor on his face. And then he would apologize to the crowd and said, I can't believe I just did that. And then he'd introduce the solo. But he was just great. Incredible singer, incredible pianist. He played piano at the show. He played drums on the show. He did all of that. And just wowed the crowd, wowed the band. Very rarely does, a lot of these pro guys that are on the band, that, a gig is a gig. This was a lot more than a gig. To this day, a lot of the guys still talk about that, the fact that what a show it was. So that was, in a snippet, that was my experience with Mel. And like I said, I was a little nervous, but we got through it. And then after the fact, we met him once again with his drummer, Donnie Osborne, back at Marty's to reconnect and talk about other opportunities. And we sat with Donnie's wife at the time. And it was just a wonderful experience. And years later, we reconnected with Dale Sheets and his daughter. And then ultimately, once again, with Steve. And we did a show with Steve we can talk about in a bit. But that's what you're going to hear a clip of is the Marty Page arrangement of Blues in the Night. This is a live performance, so I apologize for any quality. But it's 45 years old, and, a young me playing tuba, the band, and Mel going at it, and so forth.
Oh, my gosh. What a gem.
It's really
Let's
cool.
hear that.
My mama done told me when I was in knee pants. My mama done told me, she said, son, I'm the tuba player, please, our wonderful leader. Now the rains are falling, hear the train a calling. I got the blues, my mama done told me when I was in deep pants. My mama done told me when I was in deep A big hand for this wonderful orchestra.
Okay, Skip, when we heard that solo, there you are, 21 years old, playing a solo with one of the most famous showmen in America. I was nervous for you hearing that clip. You're not going to hear that clip anywhere else, folks. Really.
Yeah, that's got, well, with a story behind it. And what's funny is I didn't even know it was recorded. I got that recording about 15 years after the event by the tenor sax player at the time who knew the sound company. And so he was able to send me this recording. And anyway, so.
Wow, that's very special. And speaking of performing with Mel Tormé, Steve, your CD, Swinging at the Blue Moon Bar and Grill, that was recorded with a big band. And also it features a duet, maybe not a tuba duet, but a duet with you and your father. What was that like?
Well, it was the first jazz kind of big band album that I decided to record because I come from the pop school, to be honest. I mean, I was brought up on Steely Dan and Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and the Doobie Brothers and Todd Rundgren and Hall & Oates, the pop harmonies that I really loved listening to. But I also knew early on that I could sing jazz, that it was just kind of intrinsic. It's in my genes. And I finally decided, I should really do a big band, real jazzy album. And I asked my dad, I said, what do you think about doing a duet together? And he said, yeah, I'm game for that. And the tough thing was finding the right song, because most duets are between a man and a woman, and they lyrically speak that way. And we came up with Straighten Up and Fly Right. I said, yeah, that makes sense.
A father and son, right?
Don't you blow your top. Yeah. So we did that together. We had a little battle of the scat singers in the middle of it. And finally, on the recording, I just gave up and say, no, that's it. You win. All right, we're good.
How old were you, Steve, at that time? Yeah.
I think we recorded that. I was in my early 30s, I think.
Okay.
And I wasn't really intimidated by it. It was just, I knew the song and we had rehearsed. But the great thing was, people have asked me, did you do this the same way that Natalie Cole did Unforgettable? Did she wait till her dad had passed away and then added her voice? Now, Dad and I did that the way George Harrison and Paul McCartney recorded. We were the two of us on one microphone facing each other, and we did it live. And we did 2 takes, and Dad said, that's it, we're going to lunch. I said, okay. We were done. So, all right, sounds good.
That's awesome. All right, we have a little bit of that. Let's hear it.
A buzzard took a monkey for a ride in the air. The monkey thought that everything was on the square.
The buzzard tried to throw the monkey off of his back, but the monkey grabbed his neck and said, now listen, Jack.
Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Ain't no use in diving. What's the use in jiving? Straighten up and fly right.
Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
Oh, the buzzard told the monkey you were choking me. Release your hold and I might set you free.
The monkey looked the buzzard right dead in the eye and said, your story's touching, but it sounds like a lie.
Straighten up and fly right.
No, more like this.
All right, I got it now.
Now you're getting it.
Okay, how's this?
Wow, Steve. What comes up for you when you hear that?
There's nothing like doing a recording right in the middle of it. The other guy's going, now you're getting it.
Oh my gosh. And what a gift that you have that you had that experience and that you have that, right?
Yeah. Well, it's nice look, Dad gave me a decent ear. So I'll take it. It's fun to do. Like the first question you asked me, if he's going to be 100 years old, if he was still alive, and hopefully relatively healthy, it'd be fun to scat together again.
Right. Right. Before we go any further, gentlemen, we have to acknowledge Mel Tormé's contribution to probably every American's Christmas playlist. He wrote, which I did not realize until preparing for this show, he wrote the Christmas song, which most people know as Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. Skip, what makes that tune just so beloved, so classic? You almost can't create a Christmas album without it.
Well, the music and the lyric go hand in hand, and I believe Mel wrote a lot of the lyric of that as well. And so, it's just sort of the essence of the season captured in this wonderful piece of music, and it's just a classic. And no matter where you are, it brings you back because you remember it as a child, and as an adult, it brings you to the ideas of family and all that it involves in the season and so forth. It's just a wonderful piece of music.
When I hear it, I just think, okay.
Right.
Everything
Right.
just kind of relaxes. Have you performed it, CJ?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Many times, especially like when we do the holiday pops with the Capitol Jazz Orchestra. Just this past year, we actually performed Nat King Cole's version of it, and Dad had rearranged it for just the big band without the strings. I don't know about you, Laura, or Steve, or Dad, but my Christmas season doesn't begin until I hear that tune. The irony of it is, from the stories I've heard, it was written like in the hottest, day in July out in L.A. But
Steve probably has a story about
Oh,
it.
absolutely, yeah.
How that tune came to be.
I'll try to condense it somewhat. I'm trying to. The two writers who wrote "Let It Snow" were Sammy Kahn and who? Do you remember?
I'll Let It Snow.
Let it snow.
Sammy Kahn
Yeah.
wasn't Van Heusen.
It's another famous Jewish songwriter. Anyway, in 1945, it was. I know it was. I see. There's still a little bit left. A little bit. Sammy Kahn and Julie Stein were doing a writing session in 1945, and it was the hottest summer on record for quite some time in Los Angeles. And Sammy Kahn had an apartment in Hollywood, and they were working on this tune. And Julie Stein finally said, "Look, I'm just drenched here. I'm sopping wet. It is so hot. Let's get in your car. Let's drive to Santa Monica. Let's get some ocean air in our lungs and our hair, and come back and work on the song." And apparently Sammy Kahn said, "No, we are so close. Let's finish it." And on an extremely hot July day in 45, they wrote "Let It Snow." 2 weeks later,
That makes sense.
2 weeks later was when Dad had the writing session with Bob Wells, and was out in the San Fernando Valley, which is usually about 10 to 15 degrees hotter than Los Angeles. So Dad got out there at about 10 o'clock in the morning so they could start nice and early. They didn't have anything in mind to write. And Dad walked up to the front door of Bob Wells' house, and the door was unlocked, and he just walked in because I guess in 1945 you could do that. And he could hear that Bob was in the shower trying to cool off probably because it was already so warm. And apparently there was a tablet on the piano that had a couple of lines of lyrics that at the beginning just said, "Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose." And he came out of the shower, and Dad said, "What is this?" And Bob said, "I was just trying to think of cool thoughts, anything just to cool down." And they wrote the song in probably about an hour and 15 minutes. So two of the most famous Christmas songs written by 4 Jewish songwriters on a hot July day in Los Angeles. That's the story.
Well, you mentioned...
I dare say it's probably the only song that ever started with the word chestnuts.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think you might be right on that, Steve. Yeah. Now that I think
CJ,
about it.
you mentioned the Nat King Cole version. Of course, that's the version that I just love the most. What's it like for you as a vocalist to interpret this song for yourself, given that so many other people have already had a crack at it?
Well, like any great American songbook tune, it's telling a story. So it's kind of, for me, it's channeling my own memories and experiences as a kid and growing up and experiencing Christmas. And, as a vocalist, you try to really convey your emotion through the lyric. And I think a lot of that draws on your own experiences. So from an interpretational standpoint, even Mel knew at the time when he heard Nat King Cole go into the studio and record that version. He knew, well, this is going to be the version.
Oh, really? He knew.
Oh, absolutely. But I try to do it justice to the best of my ability, and it's just a beautiful piece of music and a cherished classic of American music. So
Absolutely. And, Steve, you wrote your own Christmas melody called I Remember Christmas Time with a respectful nod to your father's huge contribution to Christmas music. So what's the story behind I Remember Christmas Time?
Well, the real story is that song was written all right. So I moved up to Wisconsin, and one day I'm in a park with my two daughters. They're like 2 and 4 years old, and it was a hot July day, and you could actually hear the wind rustling through these oak trees. And I was thinking about, how did I end up in Berlin, Wisconsin? This is not right. I'm from New York City and Los Angeles, and now I'm living in a town of 5,300. And I thought about it. I said, you know what? This is fine, because my kids are safe and they seem to be happy. We were the only people in the park. And at that moment, I started writing an album that I put out, and the song was called A Different Time. And I was just kind of reflecting on, going back, and I'm just kind of riffing off CJ, thinking about my childhood and how safe I felt and how secure I felt. And I got lucky. I grew up in a good family, and I always felt protected. And I wanted that for my kids too. I was hoping they felt the same way. But I was just thinking about, God, you lived in such a different place in a different time. Well, that song has been in a lot of my concerts, and a guy that I work with said to me one day, he said, I keep hearing a different title of that. I keep hearing I Remember Christmas Time. I said, well, that's nice for you, but it's not the name of the song.
What was the name of the song, Steve? Yeah.
Well, it was called A Different Time.
A Different Time. Okay, yeah.
And he said, I keep hearing I Remember Christmas Time. If you change some of the lyrics, I think we would end up with a really good Christmas song. So I said, well, I don't mind having two songs. It doesn't matter to me if they have the same melody. You don't hear that often. But I changed the lyrics, and it became I Remember Christmas Time was a wondrous time when we were young, a treasured memory. And it talks about, again, my recollection of Christmas when I was a child. And you're right, there is a nod to it as we pass under the mistletoe with chestnuts roasting. And that's my nod, my homage to Dad. And CJ also knows, Dad was I think barely 20 years old when he wrote that song. And as Skip will tell you, well, they both will, it's a fairly sophisticated piece of music.
Oh, yeah.
The chord changes, and they're like, oh, this is someone with some heft behind their writing skills. The guy's got to be at least in his 40s, but that's how good he was. And my postscript to this is, when we do this concert on September 12th, which will be the day before Dad would have turned 100, it's in a big, beautiful performance arts center here in Appleton called the Fox Cities Performing Arts Center. My encore is the Christmas song, because I can't do that concert and not do the Christmas song. So I come out on stage, and I will sing the first line, and without introducing them, my two daughters will come out and sing the song with me in 3-part harmony.
Oh, my goodness.
It's chilling, because they're better singers than I am. I've actually become a pretty good singer in the last 10 years. Hopefully better than when I worked with you guys. I've learned a few things. But my two daughters have perfect pitch, and it's stunning. I've done it with them there before, and people were just weeping. So wow. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm getting choked up thinking about it. That's great.
It's pretty. I can't look at them. I have to look straight
sure.
at the audience. I can't even turn sideways and look at the one, because I'm gone. So
well, let's hear a little bit of that.
I think Dad would be really proud of that. I hope so.
I Remember Christmas Time. Let's hear.
I remember Christmas time was a wondrous time when we were young, a treasured memory. The sweet smell of evergreens filled with twinkling lights on winter nights with friends and family. And when I go back to that place, in a dream that's so sublime, I see the smiles on every face, and I remember Christmas time. And some
sun sings the Christmas song as I pass under the mistletoe with chestnuts roasting, and will remember Christmas time. Yes, I remember Christmas time.
Steve, that's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. You heard the little bells at the end.
Yes.
Great.
Ding, 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 ding. You know.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You know, CJ, we've been talking about family music. Steve obviously singing with his dad and with his
Yes. daughters.
Here's the obvious question for you. I mean, how has the father-son family musical dynamic shaped your own career?
Well, you know, as we say quite frequently in our shows, nepotism is alive and well in our organization and what we do. But it's well founded, and you know, it's been an incredible journey because everything up to this point in my career has really stemmed from just the overall exposure to this music.
Constant,
and growing up with it, and growing up with Dad. And his bands, and listening and seeing, you know, the performance itself and how everything comes together, but all of the behind the scenes too, all the stuff, you know, the sausage being made, you know, and all of that has been really special because it's kind of formed who I am today as a musician, because it's, you know, you get to a point where the music itself is maybe like, you know, the performance aspect of it might be like 10 to 15% of the whole business, and then everything else behind the scenes is what kind of churns it and makes it all happen. But it's been really fun working with him. We've had our ups and downs throughout the years, but I think at the end of the day, we both really look forward to performing together, and still do. So, and I think we might need to be examined. There might be a little screw loose with the both of us. Might be a little crazy, but you know, hey,
But it works.
It works.
It works.
It's a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Well, and Skip, it was so great to hear your stories a couple minutes ago about working with Mel Tormé, but you've also worked with Steve Tormé. So what about your collaborations there? What did you work on together?
Well, we were incredibly fortunate a few years ago to perform with Steve in his show Tormé Sings Tormé. You know, it was great to hang out with Steve and talk about it, but I have to say, Steve's a marvelous singer, and he's also he really is, and he's also just a great interpreter of his dad's music, as well as his own style and what he brings to the stage. You know, they were father and son, obviously, but Steve is great in his own right, and so often, you know, we think Steve is Mel's son. Well, Steve March-Tormé, is as good a performer and singer as anybody out there. And so to be able to work with him was a real treat. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do that again.
I was going to ask you about that. So, okay. And Steve, how about you? What stands out for you from your work with CP Music Productions?
We had a great time together. I mean, you know, the band was terrific, and they welcomed me, and you know, I'm well aware of if you have this moniker, you're going to be compared, if not by the musicians, at least the people in the audience. They go, oh, okay, I don't know who this guy is. Oh, it's Mel Tormé's son. Gee, I wonder if he's any good. Does he sound like Mel? Is he, you know, is he trading on his old man's coattails? And I appreciate the compliment. I've never tried to sound like my dad, and why would I? There's one Mel Tormé. You don't need two of them. And I've tried to. All I've tried to do is be a performer also. I don't want to just stand on stage and do a song and here's our next song. So I haven't, these guys can vouch for this. I'm a bit of a ham. So it is fun to tell stories. And I do some stuff where I kind of kid around about Dad. And I mentioned, you know, one of the songs that we did is a song that I mentioned that, you know, my dad, despite all of his success, never had a number one hit record. And everybody wants a number one hit record. You know, when, at least back in the day when you signed your first recording contract, you kind of dream of, gee, I'd love to have a number one. Well, Dad never had a number one hit record. And then I pause and go, not in the States, but in England, he had a number one hit record. I said, you know, from the first time my dad went across the pond to sing for English audiences, they fell in love with him and vice versa. And Dad became a big Anglophile. I mean, the model airplanes he worked on were Hurricanes and Spitfires and de Havilland bombers. And he bought an MGTD, he bought a Jaguar. And then I say, as a matter of fact, his third wife was English. And despite the fact that he couldn't stay and legally be in England, much of his alimony did. But you know, ladies and gentlemen,
But we digress.
but I digest, yes. So anyway, I appreciate the compliment. I like these guys. I mean, you're sitting there in the studio with two really excellent musicians who work at their craft. I've really tried to do the same thing so that when I get on stage, hopefully after a few minutes, people say, "Oh, okay, he's got his own voice, and the guy actually did his homework." That's important.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly
Well,
it.
and in addition to all the music that you do, Steve, we have a connection. You are
Yes,
also
we
a
do.
radio person, which I love that. You host a radio show, and you've been performing, composing, recording. You're not slowing down for anything. You just released a brand new album. What's it called, Steve? And what's the music like?
Okay, well, a completely different avenue. Many years ago in Los Angeles, a buddy of mine was a very good singer and guitar player. We started writing some songs together for no particular reason that were kind of in the Southern California pop rock country vein, a la J.D. Souther, Dan Fogelberg, James Taylor, the Eagles. Again, lots of beautiful spread harmonies. We just wrote these tunes and we kind of looked at each other and said, well, what are we going to do with these? Because I'm not a country singer, neither are you. We're not going to record this and go on the road with it. And we just basically did nothing with it. We made a demo and we decided let's attach a persona to these songs because it's not going to be you and me. So we came up with a character that embodies what these songs are about. And he is basically a nomadic, romantic cowboy named Dalton Diamond. But it was just kind of a goof. I like the songs a lot, but we just didn't do anything with them. And about a year and a half ago, a kid that I work with here in a number of musical veins, we do 2 or 3 different shows together. I said, did I ever play you any of the Dalton Diamond stuff? He goes, no. I played him one of the songs. He goes, God, I really like it. Do you have any more? I said, oh, I got 8 more. So I played him another one. He says, we have to do the album. We have to record this album because he got it. And I wrote 2 more songs for it, so we would have 11 songs. So the album is called Dalton Diamond, and it's Michael Murphy and myself, and we're really proud of it. I mean, it's only been out 2 weeks, and the people who've heard it said, I had no idea you could do this kind of thing. I said, well, yeah, there's no jazz in it, but it is, I think it will remind people of the early Dan Fogelberg, James Taylor stuff, just the harmonies that I like. And this guy's one of those people that can't stay still for a minute. He doesn't want to put down roots. He doesn't, if he gets involved romantically, he keeps moving on. But he wants, his cake and eat it too. When he's on the road, he tells a woman, if you can't be out here with me, I don't know that I can be true to you. So he's a bit of an anomaly. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer to what the album's called, Dalton Diamond, and that's the character that we came up with.
Oh, okay. Dalton Diamond is the character. So what's Tumbleweed Reconnection then, Steve?
Well, I don't know if Skip and CJ follow it or not. Elton John, before he became, the glammy Rocket Man, Crocodile Rock Elton John, he put out an album called Tumbleweed Connection, which is just a brilliant album that most people that know his music, most will say that's the best thing he ever did. It was his second album, and what happened was in England, his lyricist Bernie Taupin had heard the group The Band. And he really liked that Americana feel that Robbie Robertson was writing about America, about farmers and cowboys and whatnot. And Bernie told Elton, look, we've already had one album that was very successful. I want to completely change direction for the second album. What do you think that we write like a Western rock opera? And that's basically what Tumbleweed Connection is. It's got these great songs about cattle rustlers and preachers and Civil War soldiers. And if you heard some of the songs off, you'd go, oh, yeah, I know that album. Where to Now, St. Peter and Amarina. And yeah, I know that. Well, again, I talked to Michael Murphy. I said, what about we do the whole concert? We do a concert, we cover that entire album. And it's got gospel singers on it and strings, beautiful string arrangements done by Paul Buckmaster. I said, let's do the entire album. So the concert, Tumbleweed Reconnection, is the entire album start to finish, which is only 45 minutes long. So I said, well, we need a second half. And as it turns out, 1970, when that album came out, just happens to be a really iconic year for pop rock albums. It was George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. It was James Taylor's Sweet Baby James, Joni Mitchell's Ladies of the Canyon, Van Morrison's Moondance. All these albums that, at least if you're a pop rock fan, came out in 1970. So the second half of the album, the second half of the concert, is songs from 1970 that well-known tunes that round out, an hour-and-a-half concert.
Oh, wow. So your brand new album just came out.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
2 weeks ago is called...
I will send it to you if you're interested.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's not going to fit, this genre, but I'll send it to you anyway.
It's Tumbleweed Reconnection? So that's...
No, Dalton Diamond.
Dalton Diamond, okay.
I can't record Tumbleweed Reconnection because we'd have to go through so many rights.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Elton would say, yeah, you got $1 million, go ahead, record the album.
Yeah.
Well, one last question for you, Steve Tormé. You're a huge baseball fan, and I promised that I would ask you one baseball question. So here goes. You grew up in New York City. You lived in Los Angeles. Then Los Angeles. You lived in Wisconsin for a good time now, more than 15 years. So who does Steve March-Tormé root for?
I'm going to give you the wrong answer. I will root for the Brewers because I live here and I want people to be happy. And
it helps when your neighbors and friends are happy.
Team that doesn't have the salaries that the other teams have. A part of my heart still kind of roots for the Yankees, and the same thing with the Dodgers. Though the truth is, I like the sports. I don't wear my heart on my sleeve for any team anymore. I stopped doing that a long time ago. I saw too many people in bars who were miserable because they bet on their team and they lost. And I said, I can't do that anymore. Sorry. I want to enjoy the sports for what they are. So I watch a game. I sleep like a baby, whether the teams win or lose. Doesn't matter.
Amen to that. Well, that is all the time we have. Although I think we could have talked a lot more. And gentlemen, it has been just great to be with you. And CJ, thank you as always.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Laura.
That's CJ Poole, vocalist, bassist, and business director for CP Music Productions. And Skip Poole, always good to be with you, of course.
Great to be here as always.
And that is Skip Poole. He is music director for CP Music Productions. And a big thanks to our special guest, Steve March-Tormé. Steve, thank you so much for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys again. And nice to meet you, Laura.
That is Steve March-Tormé. He's a vocalist, performer, recording artist, radio host, and son of the legendary jazz vocalist Mel Tormé. His new album, as he just told us, is called Dalton Diamond. Well, that's it for Big Band Backstage for today. But next time, our guest will be the iconic New York City band leader of the Nighthawks and multi-Grammy Award winner Vince Giordano. That's going to be a very big interview. So be sure to join us for that. That is going to be next time on Big Band Backstage. To learn more about CP Music Productions, their upcoming performances, and the big band music movement, sign up for their newsletter at cplivemusic.com. Once again, that's cplivemusic.com. They're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube with the handle at CP Live Music Official. This podcast can also be found on their YouTube channel and also on Spotify. The theme for Big Band Backstage was written by Jerry Ascione. Many thanks to DHB Studios for producing this podcast. And that's it for today. I'm Laura Canoy. Please join us next time on Big Band Backstage.